Welcome to the New Planner Podcast, where it's all about helping you successfully enter the financial planning profession and accelerate your financial planning career. This podcast will help you understand the profession, become familiar with the various career paths available to you, and avoid the mistakes that limit your success. Join your host, Kaleb Brown, to explore the human side of creating a successful planning career through interviews, personal experience, and insights from the trenches. Let's get started.
Welcome to the 278th episode of the New Planner Podcast. This is Kaleb Brown, your host. My guest today is Kaleb Paddock, who is the founder of 10 Talents Financial Planning. Kaleb joins the show today to share his entrepreneurial and financial planning journey. Kaleb shares how he always loved math and ended up joining a third-party administrator after college, where he was helping financial advisors with their clients' 401k plans. He thought the financial advisor's job was much more interesting, so he connected with a family friend that owned an RIA firm, where he was able to get hired and work for a few years. Kaleb then goes on to share how he wanted to move to Colorado and start his own firm. He shares how his business model started as advice only before changing his business model. Stay tuned to the end to hear how Kaleb struggled to get clients at first, but has since been able to grow his client base and find success. I hope you enjoy this episode with Kaleb Paddock. Hey, Kaleb, welcome to the New Planner Podcast.
Hello. Thank you, Kaleb.
This is so fun. I mean, I have anybody that I meet that's named Kaleb, I've got to have him on the podcast. So
Absolutely.
Here you are.
Absolutely.
I think you're the first. I may have to go back and look at that. But thanks again for just donating the time, making time for us to come tell your story. And I think it's going to be a great story. I know a little bit of this already, but I'm looking forward to learning more as the episode unfolds. And if you would just start us off on when you thought you might want to become a financial planner, or when you heard of the financial planning profession and started going down that route.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an honor to be on the podcast. I appreciate you reaching out and requesting it. I would also guess probably your first Kaleb with a K on the podcast as well, even if there were other Kalebs. But no, yeah. So I did not know this profession existed back in high school, college. I did graduate college with a bachelor's degree in finance, but all of the professions I'd heard of were more like bank teller, accountant, just your run-of-the-mill professions that anyone might know of. I did not actually know that financial planning existed other than your stereotypical stockbroker, insurance salesman. So out of college, I was a math tutor in college, ran that business for a couple of years out of college, and then through a series of events, met some people and ended up in Walnut Creek, California, where I thought it might be kind of a financial planning job. It was not. It was a third-party administrator. So these are firms that design 401k plans, defined benefit plans, cash balance plans. Some of the people in the audience may have heard of these, or you've worked at an employer that has a 401k plan. Well, someone has to administer those. And there's a whole series of regulations. Financial advisors don't touch it. Accountants don't touch it. Bookkeepers don't touch it. It's a niche profession. They're called TPAs, third-party administrators. And the way we got clients as third-party administrators was financial advisors would send us business. And so I got to know a lot of financial advisors. So that's kind of to your question, like how did I get into it or hear about financial planning? Was through these relationships of people sending us business. And I noticed something. I did this for about 4.5 years. I would notice something. They would always give me their business card. And I would notice that the ones that seemed the most upright and in good standing as humans had these letters after their name, CFP. They all had these letters, CFP, after their name, and all the schmoozy, kind of the schmucks who just did insurance and played golf and didn't really want to do planning. They didn't have those letters. And I just thought, oh, this is an interesting observation. So I started to research. And that is how I learned about the certified financial planner designation and, kind of started down this path of like, okay, how do you become a certified financial planner? I was not going to be able to do it. The TPA firm didn't do that. So it was going to have to be at another firm. And so that was the genesis of that realization.
So you're there. That's a really cool story. I'm sure Kevin Keller and the folks over at the CFP board really appreciate that. That's
Yes.
really, really cool. So you're with the TPA firm for what? Like it looks like about 4 years or something. Is that
Yes.
right? Your
Yeah.
first, and
Four.
then
Yeah.
did you leave there to become a financial advisor somewhere?
I did. Yeah. So I actually ended up I took a job in Mountain View. So Walnut Creek to Mountain View, just moving further into the peninsula in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the firm at the time was called Stanford Investment Group. They've since were acquired and merged with Aspirient. And so great people, wonderful. That's where I got my training was the folks at Stanford Investment Group. When I joined, they were a hybrid broker dealer RIA. And I mention that just because with your audience, just understanding the terminology here is important. They had a history of selling oil and gas deals, real estate deals, not necessarily like slinging insurance products, but they needed that broker dealer designation along with the RIA designation. So hybrid broker dealer RIA, just to do those products. By the time I got there, they weren't doing that anymore. They were pretty much just running the RIA and it was legacy business. But the benefit for me is I got to learn a lot about it's called dual registration. And a lot of people, depending on how you came into the profession, may not know, broker dealer versus RIA, the different series licenses. So I never had to get Series 7 licenses, life insurance, life and health, because that's just not what they were hiring me to do. I was hired as an associate planner, and they were encouraged or excited that I liked to do business development. But the types of clients, as you might imagine, in Silicon Valley, I mean, how old was I? I mean, I was probably in my mid late 20s. I didn't know people with millions and millions of dollars. So I was hired mainly as a planner and to learn, and just wonderful, wonderful people. That's where I became a certified financial planner. They had a system where like I would pay for it. So each module I would pay out of my own pocket. Then I would show to them I passed the module and then ultimately passed the CFP exam. And then I was reimbursed as you go. So it's like, we'll reimburse you, but you have to put up your own money, pay for it, and then show us that you passed each module.
Texas Tech actually did some research a number of years ago about that exact issue. If the firms just paid for it outright, the pass rate's lower versus the candidate paying for it and getting reimbursed. A little skin in the game, but the back against the wall and feeling the pressure.
Absolutely.
Proves the pass rates, what makes sense. Okay, so you came in as an associate advisor, and then just talk to us about how did you get was the experience at the TPA enough for them to take a chance on you? Is that what happened here? Because it didn't look like you had a financial planning degree or really any experience.
Correct. Yeah. So great question. So all of my life, this is pretty much happened where I knew somebody. I'm a people person. I'm an extrovert. Anyone who's met me at XYPN Live or, I'll talk until midnight. But the person I knew, so remember I said when I got hired, it was Stanford Investment Group. Again, they merged. Yeah. But the firm was founded by a gentleman named Don, and he had a partner, a business partner, in the early 1980s. As God's providence would have it, Don and his wife moved in next door to our family. I grew up in Grass Valley, California. They bought the 10 acres next to my parents' 5 acres when I was 13 years old. So I knew him from the age of 13, and I would be curious and ask him about his business. But it was him reaching out to me. He over the years, he probably reached out. Once I went to college, he probably reached out 4 or 5 times and said, you might be interested in this profession. And I was always like, no, because I didn't want to be a stockbroker. And he did a lot of in the 1980s and the 1990s. He was slinging product and selling hot stock tips. And it's just that's how you had to do it. And I just didn't really I didn't want to be watching the stock market every day and buying and selling stocks. And he did that in his personal accounts and did well. And so I always just said, no, I don't think that's for me. And then if you look on my LinkedIn, you'll see like the progression in 2014. I was married. We had our first kid, or my wife had our first kid, and he reached out and he was like, so you want to come join now? And I was like, Okay, I'll listen. I'll hear what you have to say. And he at the time they'd interviewed, I don't know, it was like 20 people. And he just said we've gone through about 20 interviews. He'd already sold his stake, and but he was still involved with the business with like a core group of clients. And he said, so we, or the firm, has interviewed like 20 people. None of them are a good fit. And he's like, but I think you would be a good fit, because they were doing personality assessments. They were
Yeah,
doing like
good.
4 rounds of interviews over multiple months. And so it wasn't just like a quick, little interview. So I said, okay, so that was kind of my, to use Daniel Yerger's terminology, that was my foot in the door. That was how I
Hmm.
got my foot in the door, was like, hey, I know your original founder. He says that I would be good at this. Would you interview me? So that's a long answer to your question, but I did go through the application process, fluffed up my resume. I had to go through initial screening, but I did kind of have an advantage because I knew him, and he basically vouched for me and said,
Yeah.
at least interview him, and then he needs to take it from here.
And it looked like you had a good run. It was like you're there for a couple of years. They got acquired. Then it looks like you moved
Correct.
over to Asperian for about it. So all in all, it was about 3.5 years or so. Does that sound right? That between
Yeah, it
Asperian and
went.
Stanford.
Yeah, it went from 2014 to 2018, so almost 4 years. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So, and then maybe, I mean, just the highlights there of sort of the hurdles, what you learned, and then how that positioned you for your next role, which you're going to talk about in a minute.
Sure, absolutely. I think the best part working there was the planning focus. These were high net worth. So when I say high net worth, we have to define our terms. They wanted client. I don't know the minimums now, but back then it was like a $2 million minimum for assets under management. They did have a hybrid fee where it was like a percentage of AUM plus a fixed fee for planning. And that was rare to see that. And so they wanted to put an emphasis on planning. And so you would pay as a client a flat price for planning. And that planning emphasis was almost every advisor in the office had that. There were some advisors who were at the tail end of their careers that just kind of they had their legacy clients, but that planning focus was what I loved. It was so good to be able to go deep on taxes, estate planning, insurance, just all of those topics. And and these clients were people, I grew up on 5 acres. I'm the oldest of 6 children. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. We were homeschooled, so single income family. It was a wonderful experience growing up, but we didn't run in circles with people that had a
Yeah.
lot of money. Like we had a good like middle class upbringing out in the country, like I said, on 5 acres. But I didn't have experience talking to people with who worked at Microsoft or Adobe or big Snapchat, and I'll just think of all your tech firms, Facebook, Apple, and people who have millions of dollars in stock grants, and you're helping them to navigate this, and they're looking at you as like you're the expert. I mean, obviously not just me. I was on a team, but that experience of being able to get comfortable having these conversations, I feel like is one of the most important things. It's why I tell people, don't necessarily come out of college or just try to like start your own. If you're a career changer, some people just start their own firm, just cold turkey. And
Hmm.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, people do that, but I just think it's so much more valuable to get 3 to 5 years of experience, because there's hard conversations around death, divorce, job changes. Like, what is the meaning of life? Like, like what do we have more money than we ever thought we'd have? We didn't set out to make money. We just wanted to do good in the world. And now we have money. And it's all these conversations that if you have no background in that, you're kind of at a disadvantage, I feel like, or at least your clients are going to be at a disadvantage because you don't have the practice and experience. So I just feel so blessed that I was allowed in the room, basically, in these meetings. And then by the end of it, by the third and fourth year, they were letting me have more command of those meetings. I did not become like a lead advisor. We can talk about that transition. So I didn't have ownership. I didn't become a partner or equity partner in the firm, but I was kind of at that tipping point of becoming like a lead advisor when I left. But the experience was just tremendous. And it's, like I said, the people were just tremendous in terms of the teaching. And I could go up and down the halls to anybody in that office, people in trading, operations, compliance, and just ask questions and just be like, what do you do here? And it was really helpful to just kind of see all the different parts of the firm, whether it was the planning, the investments, the trading, the compliance, the administrative back office, just see how all those pieces worked.
And just so we're clear, the roles that you've discussed so far have all been salaried sort of apprenticeship models. You've not been
Correct.
required to sell and bring in business or do anything like that.
Correct. Yeah. The role, I think I had like two titles while I was there, and they were all salary with a bonus. And the bonus was based on like company targets. Aspiriant has offices across the country. And so like each office would have like a goal for the year.
Yeah.
So we're all trying to contribute to that goal. I think while I was there, I might have brought in like two clients organically that
Okay.
had money. It was like through a friend of a friend, like a connection of a connection. And it was, just your typical retirees, they're looking for a wealth management firm. And they had some structure where I think I was able to participate. If I brought in a client, there was like a percentage of the first year's revenue, pretty
Mm-hmm.
typical but it wasn't a requirement. That I think is one of the best developments I've seen in the profession is more salaried roles, even if you don't like the salary, even if you feel like it's a little bit low for a starting salary, that didn't used to exist. I'm young, but I'm old enough to remember those positions where there aren't really any salary opportunities. It was all kind of the classic, eat what you kill, phrase.
It sounds like it was a pretty good fit. Now I know they got acquired and went to a kind of a massive firm, and maybe that's what
Yes.
you're going to say. But why did you leave?
Yeah, so the main reason wasn't really them or the environment, because it was a great environment. It was that our family was in the process, our family was growing, and we decided as a family that we were going to move out of state. So we moved from California, the Bay Area, to beautiful Parker, Colorado. And as part of that move, I told them, like, I'm moving. They were very gracious when I said that. And they said, well, you can just work remotely. And then I said, well, in addition to that, after we move, I'm going to be starting my own practice. And that was where we kind of had to part ways. But they were very gracious. They let me stay on. I worked remotely for a series of months while they tried to find a new person. So basically, while they interviewed for a new person, they said, we need you to stay.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we parted ways, but it was very amicable. I still keep in touch. I have a call later this week with one of the advisors there. He and I, we'll chat, once or twice a year and stay in touch. And so it was very amicable. Because I wasn't in a business development, like bring on clients, there was not any concern around like, is there a non-solicit or non-compete?
Yeah.
I just was starting from scratch. We didn't know. I had my brother's in the military. He's out here in Colorado, but other than him, it was just starting from scratch with no network or
But why did you
clients.
do that though? You left a nice salary and benefits, and they offered you to work remotely. Why start over and start your firm,
Yeah.
especially with moving and having small kids? And just walk us through that.
So I'm very entrepreneurial and very independent. If anyone does these personality surveys, I'm what's called a choleric. And so if you look up choleric, I probably can't spell it, but just type it into an AI or something. They can probably spell it for you. But a choleric needs to be in control. So a choleric
Okay.
is most comfortable with responsibility. They need to be in a position of leadership and basically call the shots. I actually just learned this in the last 4 years about myself. So I didn't know this at the time, but it fits with kind of my personality. And there were just things that I wanted to be able to implement with clients that it just were not going to happen in a larger firm, Aspiriant or otherwise. Like
Sure.
it was just going to be thing. It wasn't a knock on them. It was just like you kind of have to fall in line if you're going to be in a corporate type of situation. And so I just really wanted that independence to be able to kind of run my own firm, just to build something. When I was in college, I started a math tutoring business, and that gave me like a taste of like having to build something, acquire clients, show value, get repeat business. So I was single. I didn't have a family. But that kind of let me know, okay, I think I could do this. And even though I didn't bring on like dozens and dozens of clients, I just felt like, have you heard of there's a guy named Naval Ravikant. So he's more in the tech, in the VC space. I probably heard him in Silicon Valley when I was there. So Naval talks a lot about this, that your competitive advantage in today's day and age is you. It's your
Mm-hmm.
personality, it's the way you talk, it's the way you interact, it's your style. And we see this more and more with advisors in kind of the solo space or even the firms. People don't hire a firm. I mean, they might if it's like Goldman Sachs or something, but they don't hire a firm. They hire a person. And so that really resonated with me, that I was like, okay, people are going to hire me based on me, not the firm necessarily that I'm with. And so I wanted to kind of build something on my personality and just have that ownership, was at the end of the day kind of what I just that independence.
Yeah, it looks like you started that back in late 2018. So you've been at
Yeah.
it about
August of 18. Yeah.
7.5 years or so, closing in on a year. I mean, how was it? I mean, I think you said you had your brother-in-law you were able to bring on, but were you able to get client? I mean, how long did it take you to get clients and start making money?
Yeah, so great question. So yeah, so my brother-in-law was out here, but he was in the Air Force. He didn't know anybody with who would want to be a client. It was just a point of contact. Good to have family nearby. So getting clients was hard, as anyone will tell you. I was able to bring one client. There was one client that reached out as part of the move from the old firm, and I was very transparent. I immediately called compliance and said, I didn't reach out. They reached out. They got
Yep.
my number. I don't know. I don't know how they got it. And they just said, we don't care.
Don't worry
This
about
is a smaller,
it.
this is a smaller, but didn't meet the minimum. They were just like, whatever. Like, thank you for letting us know. So technically, I did not start from absolute zero. I had him. He came
Yeah,
over, but that took, as anyone knows, that took about like 4 months before I saw any revenue from that, just because of the ACAT transfers, and I
sure.
bill quarterly in arrears. So anytime someone comes on to be a client, it's going to take us several months before any revenue came out of that. I found a niche early on. So I was able to, in the initial revenue that I had was from just planning only. It's, I think now pretty well referred to as advice only
Yeah.
in the profession now. And so I was advice only for the first several years, except for that one client, just because of the history there. And over time, what happened is so I thought advice only was like the creme of the creme. Like, don't be an idiot. Like, do this yourself and just pay the bare minimum in fees. And what kind of blew my world was people would come to me and say, okay, we get it. Like, you're telling us to do this ourselves, but can't you do it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
can't, you're a financial advisor. Like, why can't you do it? And I would say, because you shouldn't, don't be an idiot. Like, you're gonna waste all this money fees. And they would tell me, well, but we want you to do it. Like, we don't want to do it. So why can't you do it? And so I brought this back to my wife and said, I don't know what to do. Like, I want it to be planning only, advice only, and I'm getting clients for that. But then there's these other group of people that want me to do it. And she's just like, just
Do it.
do what they want.
Thank you, Phil Knight.
Yeah,
Nike.
I know. Yeah, just do it. Like, why are you so stuck on just this one model?
They're called
So then I ran,
delegators.
exactly. So that kind of blew my mind because I
Yeah.
was really drinking the Kool-Aid of that. And I just thought that was like, no one is going to hire an AUM advisor. That was just where my headspace was in that time period. So I ran kind of two models simultaneous. I had an advice only model for those people, and then I ran a kind of your traditional 1% of assets under management model for those people till about 2021, 2022, where I decided to abandon the advice only completely. It just was not something that was filling my bucket. It was just not
Wow.
something that I had great clients in that group, but it started to keep me up at night where they would not execute on my recommendation, or they would
Mm.
execute on like an investment trade, but they executed like 9 months later. And I'm like,
Guys.
okay, like the
Yeah.
geopolitics have changed, like interest
Oh
rates have
man.
changed. Like, you did what I told you, but like, I don't want to have to babysit you. And a lot of people in advice only, they're very prompt, they get stuff done. I had those as well. But I started to wonder like, okay, they're not executing on estate documents. They're not executing on life insurance. They're not executing on trades. They're not executing on Roth conversions, or they're only doing like half of the things I said. And I'm like, okay, they're paying me. A lot of this work was hourly work. So like I was getting paid hourly to like get on a Zoom call and try to help them execute like a transfer of assets or do a rebalance. But there were a lot of them that I was starting to wonder, like, what is my liability here
Yeah.
of not executing and being a choleric and needing to be in control as a leader, an authority figure. Like I really found a lot of joy in being able to execute things like while I don't sell life insurance, I can make the email introduction to the life insurance agent. I can get the estate attorney to follow up. When I'm running the whole relationship with the AUM clients, what I essentially built is what I have now, which is basically a virtual family office. So when clients come, it's very clear they're not allowed to use TurboTax. They're not allowed to use provide now there's exceptions always, right? Oh, if someone has their brother-in-law, they have a relationship with an accountant, but they basically, if they don't have anyone, they have to use my accountant, they have to use my estate attorney, they have to use my insurance broker, they have to use everyone that I've pre-vetted down to like realtors, mortgage brokers. It's very like you're getting into the ecosystem. So you're not just getting financial advice, you're entering the 10 talent ecosystem and you will use our providers. You don't get to be like, oh, I'll just do my taxes myself on TurboTax. It's like, no, like that is over. That is, you will no
Mhm.
longer be doing this yourself. And so that's turned out to be the best model because I have a lot more, I guess you would say, power or authority to follow through. And I would say for most every client, within a 1 to 2 year period of us meeting each other, they're pretty dialed in terms of like the life insurance, the estate planning, the consolidation of investments, cash flow planning. Like everything is really tight and buttoned up within 12 to 24 months. And that's it. Just I sleep better at night knowing like people have the policies they need, they've got the estate documents they need, and it's just a much better fit for me. And then that was able to attract the people that found that valuable. But I kind of started with like, what do I need to feel fulfilled and feel like I can make a difference and sleep well at night? And that model did come out of the prior firm because when we merged, that that firm, when I left, Experience, and still to this day, like their premium service is family office services. Like that is their bread and butter. They have attorneys on staff, accountants on staff. Like that is like if you have 40, 50 million, $100 million, like you want a dialed in family office just like them to kind of handle everything for you. And my vision kind of became like, I wonder if that's possible for people like with 1 to 5 million. What could they get a family office type of experience, but at the 1 to 5? And I realize for many listening, or that's still a lot of money, 1 to 5 million. But people who have 1 to 5 million, their experience is traditionally like, well, I'm not going to name all the firms that I would disparage, but we know what firms will meet with them. They get one meeting a year. They don't get tax planning. They don't get their tax return reviewed. They don't have insurance broker contacts. They're getting sold product. So I just felt like that's kind of a niche that I could serve clients in that space, but just bring a service level that they're kind of like their jaw drops. Like what? Like we get all of this, in the ecosystem, and it is a very compelling value proposition.
Well, what's the cost? You're doing all this for them, which is great, and that's kind of how I've operated my entire career. I
Yep.
mean, how much is this costing? I mean, what do they pay?
So most everybody, so I've gone through a process where everyone is going through updated agreements. This started over the like probably a year and a half ago, and it will come to completion this year. And pretty much every client, except for rare cases, is just on a very straightforward. It's 1% of what I manage at Schwab up to a 2.5 million cap. And so if you have over 2.5 million, it's basically complimentary or free. And then I'm covering the tax return. So I meet with the accountant in the spring and the fall at a minimum to discuss client cases. They're in my building, and so I'm able to, be able to have a good relationship, with them and see them regularly. And then I'll discuss. So they'll bill me, like they bill me hourly for their time, and I'm like, wonderful. I would love to pay you for your time. Like I don't mind that at
Mm-hmm.
all. But what I learned is like if clients have to pay out of pocket for things like a trust or their tax return. So I'll do that like on trust amendments. A lot of times clients will come with estate documents. So I'll say if you need an amendment or we need to update the trust, like I'll
Yeah.
cover that as well. Obviously that's maybe that's every 5 to 10 years. That's not every year. But because I don't want price to be a hurdle. I don't want to say, oh, you should work with this accountant. And the client's like, well, what is that going to cost? I just want them to do what I say. And if I say work with this accountant, don't worry about the cost. Like I'm covering the cost. I'm paying all the invoices. And then there's not this barrier of like, why did they send me an invoice? Why did I get an invoice for this? And then I have to explain myself. Well, I had lunch with them and I wanted to discuss this rental property. And, people just feel nickel and dimed. And it's just like, I'd rather they nickel and dime me and I will pay their invoice. I don't mind being nickel and dimed for 45 minutes of conversation. And then the client experience is just seamless. They're just doing a standard 1% on whatever I manage up to the cap. And it just kind of, it's intended to include everything basically
Okay.
that we do with them.
And it just maybe talk a little bit about the capacity too. I mean, you're doing a lot for these clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that limit, I mean, how many people can you work with really realistically at any given time?
Yeah, it's a good question. So because I came out of an advice only model, I've been tracking my hours for probably almost 5 years now. Not at the very beginning, but just kind of as I got going. I use an app called Toggle,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Toggl. And so to this day, I track my time more out of curiosity, and it has become a habit. It was hard at first. It took probably 6 to 9 months to get used to using it. But I have an app on my phone, an app on my browser, it's an add-on on the
Mm-hmm.
browser. And so it's become kind of second nature. And so I have really good data on like if I meet someone and they're like, we have this, this, and this, and we own this, this, and this, I can pretty much peg how many hours that's going to take based on. So that's kind of how I landed on the 1% to the 2.5
Okay.
million cap. It's kind of uniform, but it's actually fit really well with the services that I offer. So I currently serve 33 client households on an ongoing basis. They get their accounts managed at Schwab. So I don't have any more advice only clients. Not every one of those 33 is in the virtual family office model. So I do have legacy clients. I do
Sure.
have folks that's just not appropriate to be doing all those services. I usually will say once you get to 1 million in assets under management, that's usually the cutoff of saying like I can pay for the tax return, I can cover these other costs. But I do have, a handful of clients under 1 million, and they're not getting all those services. But we meet the meeting schedule is it's pretty set or rigorous. Like it's every 3 to 4 months. I always schedule the next meeting at the current meeting, and that's kind of non-negotiable. Like I want to see them.
Sure.
So you don't get to do the one annual meeting. It's like I want to talk to you. I want to know what's going on in your life. So we meet every 3 to 4 months pretty rigorously. And those are great meetings. I feel like there's always something to talk about. And capacity is probably, I would think in the near term, maybe 40 would be. I know the
Yeah.
KISS research has said 50, and I
Sounds
thought
about right.
50.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought 50 originally, but I'm at 33. That's a really good number. I think if they were the right fit, and I'm much more selective now, I could probably get to 40. But to go from 40 to 50, I think I need to bring on, I don't have any staff. I'm just a solo. I'm a pure solo.
Mhm.
So I think it would just be it would stretch me because it is more work, but I like the deep work. I like being able to go deeper. And, it's just how the numbers work is you're going to have a smaller practice.
Really appreciate you sharing that, Kaleb. Really cool
Absolutely.
business. Congrats on building that. I mean, as we're winding down and closing out here, I mean, just any other words of advice or wisdom for career changers, kind of like yourself that are pivoting or maybe thinking about starting a firm or they're just an employee, they're looking for an employee job? What would you tell them?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say there's just so much good information. We mentioned one earlier, Dan Yerger's Getting in the Door. Try to consume as much of that as possible. Be super curious. When I first moved to Colorado, I just did a ton of networking. And so that kind of fit my personality. But even if it's not your personality, like people need to know what you're doing. They need to be aware. So going to FPA events, NAPFA events, XYPN events, virtually, in person, like just really putting yourself out there and then have a mindset of give more than you get. Like be a giver. I think there's a book called The Go Giver. I think it's called The Go Giver. Instead of The Go Getter, it's The Go Giver, or something like that. And just have that mindset. Like you need to be in a mindset if you're new or you're trying to start your own practice where you need to give way more than you get. And if you do that, you're going to do really, really well. There's another quote, I collect these quotes. It's basically on that. It's like, you can have anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. And it's like, oh, that's a really good way to think of like, okay, I'm going to serve people and with no expectation of like, okay, well, you're going to refer me someone, because that mindset can just get really tough with like accountants, realtors, other advisors. And so, yeah, just be a giver, just be a giver and seek to help others. And as your network expands, you just put yourself in a position for serendipitous connections and for things to happen that you would have never guessed. So yeah, put yourself out there, even if it's uncomfortable, create, put something out in the world, show up and just be a giver.
And also, I mean, one you kind of alluded, I mean, this hasn't happened overnight. I mean, you had a lot of years of experience before, and then you're almost 8 years into the firm. I mean, patience.
Yeah.
This is a time value of money, snowball at the top of the hill. I'm like, it just takes a little time. So, just remember, if you're getting frustrated.
Just like investing. Yeah. Just like investing in a Roth IRA. Like the great thing about this profession is that it does compound on itself. Right. So it's a relationship business. And so relationships compound over time. And so I think that's one of the great things about it. That's how I would think of it.
Awesome stuff, Kaleb. Hey, thanks for coming on. It was great to catch up with you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the New Planner Podcast. If you're ready to discover the top career paths for financial planners and see which track is best for you, we created a free guide to help you. Grab your copy of the Financial Planner Career Roadmap at newplannerrecruiting.com/roadmap. There, you'll also find more tools and resources all created to help you build a successful financial planning career. Tune back in next week for another episode, and until then, we're here to help you succeed.